Kelleher.
Hello, there's Miss Riley.
Hi.
We're all here. Rob, you're the way you're positioned on my monitor. You're like half your head is out of the shot.
Oh, I am. Okay. Let me move it a little bit then. Here, I'm going to adjust this. How about now?
You look great.
Okay, thanks.
You look marvelous.
Thank you.
All right. So we're here with Miss Riley.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We're very happy to have you here. And Miss Riley is she is a science teacher. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role, Miss Riley? Because it's actually a really interesting one.
Yeah, I do have a really interesting role. This is my 5th year teaching science and my 4th year in our dual language program. So a majority of my classes are science classes, but they're taught in Spanish. So I'm not necessarily like instructing in language, but building students' language strength and development through direct science content, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
It's cool, and I imagine challenging.
It is challenging. I feel sometimes like my Spanish gets worse because the kids' Spanish is not always super correct. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I hear this repeatedly and I know it's wrong, but I start saying it. Or just like the lack of resources is really challenging. Like so few scientific texts and videos and stuff are actually made in Spanish, but I do feel really strongly that the kids deserve like their instruction in Spanish 100% rather than like, oh, I couldn't find something good, so like let's just do this thing in English, and then going back and forth and kind of devaluing the language in a space where it's really supposed to be central.
And in so doing, there's I imagine a lot of like person-to-person work that has to happen, because the language barrier or the language element to it opens up a certain level. I think because a lot of those kids aren't Spanish speakers as their first language, right? So they're learning the language as a language learner. And in order to take that risk as a language learner, there's that thing, the affective filter that I'm sure you're aware of, that's just like that part of you that gets embarrassed when you sound like a dummy, pretty much. That what just came out of your mouth isn't what you meant. You got to really, a lot of that is the social emotional aspect of it, and the description of what you just gave is you feel like you're kind of like your language is developing along with theirs.
Oh, definitely. I mess up all the time, and my kids will point out when I say something wrong, and we'll have conversations because sometimes I say things that they think are wrong that are correct in like Spanish, and so we have to look up like, how do you say this in different countries? And we have those kinds of conversations about different cultures and how language develops, and I feel really lucky. Like my kids, obviously they have some worries about sounding silly, but I sound silly all the time in front of them as the teacher. So it's like less of an issue because my accent is obviously not a native speaker's accent. They know that like I learned Spanish later in life. So I think that can be really helpful for them.
They're seeing you're just modeling learning.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. They see the struggle and they see that you're still trying to do what you need to do to accomplish whatever needs to be done in the classroom. And there's always that appreciation. I think that a lot of us don't, as teachers, we don't recognize that enough.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So the other element that I think is really interesting is on top of the language and the science, you're also committed to which I would say is a restorative idea, this idea that we do things with people instead of to or for them. You find time, or you make time in that context, it's already very academically challenging, to cultivate the community and the social emotional, like the factors that go into the classroom. So could you give us kind of a overview of what that might look like day to day with how you interact with the kids?
I'm interested to hear this.
So I started off like really small. I was like, okay, I'm going to replace science warm-ups with like a check-in question every day. And so we did that for a whole year. And then the next year I added like, okay, instead of just like a little question, they're actually going to get into groups of 4 and they're going to have a conversation every morning before we start. And so I just kind of kept building on that. Now we do, with distance learning, every Friday we do class circles. So I sort of have like a randomized list of all of their names so they can see what order they're going to go in since we're not in a physical circle. And then we have 2 or 3 questions that we go through, and each student has a chance to unmute and respond to the question. And they talk about how much they really like that. I've asked them in surveys several times, like, do you really want to do a class circle every Friday? And at least 60% of them say yes.
Wow.
So that's really cool. And then in terms of science classes with distance learning, I still have an entrance question that they respond to in the chat. Sometimes it is a little sciencey, but most often it's like tomorrow's is, what's your favorite planet? And so kids are going to talk about planets in the chat. And then sometimes it's a check-in, like what weather pattern best describes how you're feeling today, and they talk about that.
So they're science related.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Oh,
that's really cool.
They are a little sciencey, but also, sort of giving students an opportunity to reflect and check in with themselves. And then after that, we play some sort of game. Right now, each student has written like Kahoot questions about themselves, and so we play a little Kahoot about each student. We've also played 2 Truths and a Lie, and one that we made up called Last Person Standing, where you have 3 facts about each person, and everybody raises their hand on teams, and then as you read the facts, if it doesn't apply to you, you lower your hand and you see what everybody has in common, or maybe what makes a person unique. And then after the game, we do a breathing exercise, which I just started during distance learning. I have been a yoga teacher for 3 years now, but I always felt like that was like going a little too far, like a little too woo-woo for my students. But I was like, you know what? They're at home, they're at a computer all day, they need a moment to just like reset. So I would say, I have like 2 or 3 kids who are very adamant, like, I don't want to breathe, it's not for me. And I say, cool, if you can just wait the 30 seconds while we do our breathing exercises, then we're good to go. Good. But almost all of my kids say that breathing really, really helps them. So they're pretty fun. I learned them through some courses for kids yoga. So they're a little bit more geared toward children than like traditional yoga breathing would be. So there's like bunny breath and balloon breath. And so there's sort of visuals that help students tap into that. But those are kind of the main things we're doing during distance learning to make sure that students really feel like they are seen and heard and important before we even worry about whatever science topic we're going to talk about.
Really good. Really important. I want to see Joe do bunny breath.
I was just thinking that maybe we should do bunny breath.
He has a bunny picture. He has a bunny picture.
That's right. The way that the video starts is with that fire breathing rabbit. So bunny breath. This is like synchronicity. Yeah. This is a very serendipitous moment. We have to take advantage of this.
Amazing.
Will you do bunny breath with me, Rob?
I will. Can you lead us in that?
Let's do bunny breath.
Absolutely.
I want to try.
So for all of our breathing exercises, we're going to start by sitting up really tall and just let your shoulders relax a little bit. And I'll explain bunny breath. I'll show it to you, and then we'll try 3 rounds of the breath together. So bunny breath, we're going to kind of think about bunnies and how their noses sort of wiggle. And on the inhale, we'll take 3 quick sniffs through the nose. And then we'll just sigh it out. So that's bunny breath. Okay, are we ready? We'll do it 3 times. Breathe in 3 times quick. Little pause and let it go. 2 more times. Inhale. And let it go. Last one. Breathe in. And release. You sort of shake it out and breathe naturally. Notice how that feels, maybe a little bit different.
Much more.
That's what we do.
I feel revived.
How many? Okay.
We just do 3 rounds of breath each class period.
Okay.
And that took what, 45 seconds?
Yeah, it's super quick.
If that.
But we also talk about like each kind of breath sort of is meant to have a different purpose. So bunny breath kind of brings some oxygen into your brain, but lets you release some tension on the exhale. I also had my students, the weirdest breath we've done so far is humming bee breath, where your exhale is literally just a hum. But that one is really cool for adding a sense of like concentration and focus. So we did that one during our end of course exams so that they could.
And were they all on mic, Miss Riley, when you did the
I
humming
don't make
thing?
them on mic, no.
I think that would be hilarious, though. I think that would be hilarious to hear the humming, but maybe distracting.
I'm worried that less kids would participate. You know?
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah. I like that. That doesn't take long at all. I'd like to incorporate some of that.
Yeah, I have a bunch of slides that I can share with you all.
Yes, please.
My students.
Whenever you have a moment, that would be awesome.
Absolutely.
And then you're also a certified yoga instructor, correct?
I am. Yes.
So do you incorporate any like? And I know you just said that like the yoga was a little bit maybe I can't remember the exact.
Woo woo.
Woo woo. It's a little woo woo. But do you incorporate motion in any sense in your instruction during this distance learning? Because I know for me personally, I'm a different person if I get exercise. If I'm kind of stuck on a problem or just trying, even just like little basic things, like I'm sitting there waiting for a page to load. If I take a breath or just go for a little walk around the upstairs and come back, I'm ready to engage again. So how does your yoga, even though you may not be doing it in a way that's overt, do you find that it does sort of creep into your practice at all?
So, I mean, there's two parts to that question. Incorporating movement and distance learning, like mostly the movement comes in with breath. Sometimes our breaths also involve movement. I'm not that good at like giving them stretch breaks or things like that, but I have assigned like asynchronous work where their job is to like go do something nice for someone or go outside and ride your skateboard or whatever it is. Take a photo and write me a paragraph about it, and that's their work for the day.
So go out, move, live life, provide evidence.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's your
show me you did it.
That's great.
So, but there's a bunch of different options. You know, students can paint or draw, or it's just like time away from a screen to take care of yourself, and however that feels best for you.
So, Mr. Reyes, as a physical education teacher, what's going through your mind right now?
I am just so happy that someone is doing that in another department, Ms. Riley. So I'm glad that you are. It's supporting us indirectly, really, because we're all about movement and talking about how all the things that you just mentioned about movement is beneficial in many ways that they may not even realize. But then to point it out to them and say, how do you feel after breathing? You know, bunny breaths, and do you feel more relaxed? And so they can incorporate that kind of stuff on their own, perhaps, you know, so you're teaching them some skills that they can take away from the classroom as well, you know, and apply it throughout their day, really.
Definitely. And then the other part of your question was like, how does yoga affect my teaching? Like, I don't bring in a lot of overt movement, but I really feel like being a yoga practitioner helps me, like, when a kid says something that gets on my nerves, like I can immediately feel that in my body. Like I feel how tight my chest is. I feel the tension, and I can be like, okay, well, I really would like to talk to you about that, but I need to just take a moment, step away and breathe for a second.
Get your woo-woo on.
Yeah, I get my woo-woo on, and the kids see that. You know, they notice like, oh, she didn't immediately react to what I said. She took a minute to like step back, get away from the emotion, and then we can talk about it. So I think like just being able to know that about myself is a really good model for some of our students.
And I think it's a really good model for them to know that here's a person that I just annoyed, because they're getting it too on a different level where it's like, okay, I can see I had an impact on this other person, and they don't get like a angry word or anything that's going to be a damaging component of the relationship moving forward, but they are learning, okay, maybe I did cross a line here. If Miss Riley needs to take a breath, it means I stepped over the line, and you're communicating that in a different way than many of us would by that awareness that you have.
Yeah.
It's
really cool.
I'm learning a lot of new techniques right now.
I'm glad.
Just today, I could have definitely stepped away from the screen rather than, you know.
The kids just have like 3 minutes of the background you got there. We're like, where did Mr. Reyes go? It's just
he's been gone for 3 he's been gone for 5 minutes.
Everybody's like in the chat, dude, come on, man. Why'd you make him mad? But yeah. Oh, well, I've learned a lot today too. And yeah, this gives me a lot to think about.
I'm glad. Hopefully, I mean, I know these are like really personal practices to me, but I think that, you know, the students resonate with what resonates with you. Even my kids who at the beginning were like, I'm not breathing, most of them do the breaths now. So just if you're authentic with whatever works for you and whatever you believe in, I think that will really help your students.